Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stepping into Your Power Using Your Voice, brought to you by the Mind Trust. I'm Tina Cosby, host of Community Connection on AM 1310, 92.7 FM, and 95.1 FM, The Light. Our panelists today are going to be with us as I moderate the panel discussion. So let's start to bring them in. They are all here and ready to go. Our first panelist is Tihesha Henderson. She is the head of school of the Sankofa School of Success. Welcome, Ms. Henderson. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. Our next panelist is Ms. Kelli Marshall. She is the Senior Vice President of Great Schools with the Mind Trust. Ms. Marshall, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And our next finalist is Chrystal Westerhaus, founding principal of Avondale Meadows Middle School. Ms. Westerhaus, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Now, our discussion, as the title suggests, is going to focus on women and girls of color effectively using their voices. So as a little bit of a preview, I'm going to read our open here. And it states, there is a stigma we face when expressing ourselves. We are perceived as either too direct, angry, conceited, aggressive, or on the other end of the spectrum, too sensitive or too emotional, or as the kids like to say, extra. There's a lot of extra. While it is important to be mindful of such stereotypes, we have to find a healthy balance and not mute ourselves, especially given the fact that society has historically tried to mute us. But let us be mindful that our voices are indeed powerful, that we as women create movements, we instill change, and we make history. With that being said, let's start talking. Okay. Again, this is just a nice free-flowing roundtable, so no one has any particular place in line, first, second, third. No questions directed to any one particular person, but we want a free-flowing, good conversation. So let's start out getting to know a little bit more about you. So I will say, let's start as far as my screen is concerned. We'll start with Ms. Henderson. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Tihesha Henderson, and I am the proud founder and head of school of Sankofa School of Success. I have served in many leadership capacities in the Indianapolis Public School District for over 20 years now. My school is based on social emotional learning, and we pride ourselves in building community and building a learning environment where students thrive. And so I am happy to be here today.
Indeed. Ms. Marshall, Kelli Marshall.
Yes, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Kelli Marshall, the Senior Vice President of Schools with the Mind Trust. And the Mind Trust is an education nonprofit locally based here that works to just support existing schools and to also help to bring talent to launch autonomous and innovation charter schools here in the city. And our mission is just to provide an opportunity for all students to experience high quality instruction, no matter the school that they attend, and just making sure that there's equity and access.
Indeed, indeed. And Ms. Westerhaus, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am Chrystal Westerhaus, and I'm the founding principal of Avondale Meadows Middle School here in the Meadows community. We are a newer school, but I believe we are one of the fastest growing schools, both in terms of enrollment and academics. Our mission is to make sure that all of our scholars are ready to attend competitive and rigorous high schools of their choice and are successful in life. And we believe in partnering closely with families to make sure that the whole family is being served well.
Well, thank you very much. Very accomplished. Okay, so I'm ready. I got a good panel here. You guys are all just absolutely wonderful. But as the title says, and it'll frame our conversation, stepping into your power using your voice. And one of the first questions that's here on the list, and it's a good question, and the question is, what comes to mind when you hear these words? Arrogant, aggressive, angry, and then emotional, moody, unstable. And anybody can start with that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 words that apparently are typically applied to women sometimes. So what comes to mind when you hear these words?
I think at some point in time in my career, I've probably been referred to by each one of those adjectives. And it usually comes at a time in which I am expressing my voice, maybe in contrast to someone else's thought. But it, again, it's those kind of words that has continued to propel me into, the successful positions that I've had.
Where do the words come from? Who uses these words? I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of the conversation, but when you hear these words, from where do they come? Where do they come from?
Usually they come from my employees or the stakeholders that I serve, but mainly my teachers and staff.
That's right. When I heard these words, I immediately thought survey feedback whenever I'm doing a survey on my stakeholders that I serve.
Uh-huh. So you're also very accomplished in your own rights, and all of you do something different but similar. This question isn't on the list. It's something I've always been curious about. In your careers, what type of I guess bias have you experienced more of? In terms of, have you experienced more bias in terms of being African American, or have you experienced more bias in your profession in terms of being a female? What do you think? Sorry, it wasn't on the question, but I had to throw that in there. It's questions that we had, but I'm always curious about that because I get varied answers from African American females, and I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
I would say, go ahead. I would say being a young woman leading. So just being young and being a woman.
Being a female, being young and being female. Okay, yeah. And Kelli, you were about to weigh in. So.
I was going to say that I think coming up, like through my teenage years and things like that, it was always race, right? But no sooner than you step into a leadership role, I have had to speak more to, just my skill sets being a woman, more so than race. And it's with every position, I'm usually having to in some kind of way prove that I am as equipped, if not more so, than my male counterpart.
And Ms. Westerhaus, sexism or racism, which have you experienced more of in your profession?
Sexism, I would say. I think everyone assumes racism, and we're doing so much equity work nowadays that everyone is thinking that. But when I speak with my staff, which we have a high percentage of males on staff, about how they feel when I give them directives, I have to question and push them if it is not a gender issue, if they have not gotten so many directives from a female before, and if that maybe makes them feel some type of way.
How would you prepare young African-American females going into, about to embark upon their positions? How would you explain that to them? Because I think a lot of them probably think, I'm going to have to battle racism or what have you, and probably not thinking that maybe a larger battle is sexism. And I will say that I concur with all three of you that I found in my career. People, when you get questions and talks, I have found that I have experienced, and everybody kind of looks like, what? Yes, I've experienced more sexism than I ever have racism, being an African-American female in my position. And it doesn't always compute to people. So what do you think? How would you prepare a young woman, a young African-American woman for that? Okay, go ahead.
For me, it's always been instilling in them a level of confidence and just building their self-esteem, because you want them to be, whenever I'm approached by a young female of color, I'm always trying to assess whether or not they truly feel confident within themselves, because that's what others will pick up on. And that's usually when they may, in an attempt to advocate for themselves, they'll respond in some cases inappropriately, but that all comes with that confidence. So I think the advice, or what I would say, is you got to be confident within yourself, and then that helps you to stand in front of any audience. You got to know your audience, whomever you're approaching or what you're approaching, but just that self-esteem and the confidence is what I would advise them of.
Yeah, indeed. That's something I think that you gain very quickly. Because you know what you know, you're prepared, and you just gain it. Or is that overstating it, or what do you think? Ms. Henderson, you're nodding your head.
I think when you know your stuff, you're confident. If you are an expert in your field, or you're an expert at what you are discussing or presenting, that confidence comes with it.
What about successes that help, that let you know that you know your stuff? How do you process those when you had a success and it's like, I know that now, right? How does that feel? Ms. Westerhaus, you were nodding too.
It feels good. I think no matter where my staff, what feedback they've given me, families have given me, I'm confident that I serve students well and that students are my number one priority. And being able to lean on that always feels good. One thing that I never can disagree with someone about is how much I love kids. And so we always come back to that. And I know that's my strength. That's kind of where I get my confidence from.
Indeed. Here's another good question here. And you can answer yes or no, and then you can all elaborate on it. But do you bring your complete self to the workplace and in your volunteer roles? Do you bring your complete self? And maybe when you answer yes or no, maybe you can explain to our listeners and viewers what your complete self is. Because I see the terminology, your complete self. Do you bring it? And what is your complete self? Anybody can go first.
I would say yes. And I would say yes because I have a growth mindset, and I want those around me to have a growth mindset as well. I know that I have opportunities that I'm working on, but I also know what I'm good at. And I want my staff and the people that I interact with to understand that I'm human. I have feelings. I get upset. I have to learn how to self-manage and be self-aware. And I want them to be able to do that as well. And so I bring my whole self because I want people to know who I am. I want them to, if we are a social emotional learning school, then self-awareness and self-management is a part of that. And we've learned over the years that as much as we're teaching those 5 competencies of social emotional learning, we as adults have to embody that as well. And so myself and my staff, we work hard at knowing who we are and sharing who we are with one another, as well as helping one another manage those emotions or whatever we're dealing with every day. So I definitely bring my whole self to this work. Whereas years ago, I probably didn't. I probably was more muted years ago.
Do you ever, I mean, is it, I guess the energy that it takes, it must be a lot of energy to bring your whole self, because everybody sometimes is like, I don't know if I can do it. But then when you get there and you get going, so is it a thing that you have to adjust to each day, or is it just on auto? You got it there?
No, if it's who you are, then there's no extra energy put into it. If it's not who you are and you're putting on a facade, that's where the energy comes into play.
Makes sense. Okay. Ms. Westerhaus, I can see you noodling.
I was thinking about her answer and reflecting. I lead with my whole self, and I think your passion is contagious. So I think I want my teachers to feel my passion. I don't think I always bring my whole self because I want to bring what works and impacts others to do the great work I believe in. So my feelings are true, but sometimes my staff is not ready for my 100% passion. If I am working with a diverse staff and they make a decision for a student that I believe might have some bias in the decision, my point is to get them to make the best decision for the child. I might not flat out say the rage that I have in my heart, but I make sure that the child gets the equity that they deserve and the fairness that they deserve. And I think that's something I've been working on because the passion and the emotion comes through so strongly that I don't want to miss the service. And I hate to say it, but that's what I've learned to get results for kids and to get results for my own children who attend school. Sometimes the passion is not what gets the end result that I hope to get. And so I'm trying to strategically work to get what's best for the people I serve.
Okay. And Ms. Marshall?
That, Chrystal, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And you asked about the energy that it takes. The energy for me is not bringing my whole self. It's identifying that balance and in order to remain in service, right? So depending upon the audience, I know what portions of myself I can bring. I know to what degree I can bring my full self. Now, and when it comes down to speaking in terms of equity or what's in the best interest of children, and specifically children of color, I have no problem. I can be unapologetic about how I step forward. But when I'm trying to make sure that I am presenting myself in such a way that I'm allowing myself to be that coach, then I also have to meet my audience where they are.
How do you gauge where someone is?
It's almost that I'm trying to assess whether or not their level of response is aligned to the vision in which I intended. And so I'm always assessing how is the audience perceiving me, and I'm reflecting on what I'm saying, which again, that speaks to also just being a Black woman. I always have to be conscious of what I'm saying and who I'm saying it to. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case for for other races.
Do any of you feel the same as Ms. Marshall? As being a Black woman, you have to be mindful of how you present yourself?
I do. I want to get results, and so in the work that I do, I'm aware that I have some staff that aren't familiar with working with minorities, and it's like you were saying, how do I know where they are? I work with them like I would work with a student as a teacher. I try to assess where their gap is and make sure that we're all on the same mission and all hitting the same end goal. But I have to observe teachers. I have to talk to teachers. I have to get to know the people I work with to see what they can take and what will motivate them. Because at the end of the day, I want what's best. And like I said, me, 100% Chrystal can come off really strong and maybe even turn off people. And I can't turn off the people who are working for the kids. They got to all be on the same page. So I do that kind of by any means necessary to make sure we're all aligned.
Yeah. The urgency that all three of you and the passion that you all have for these children is coming through loud and clear. The urgency and the passion, I can just feel it. How do you explain that to someone who may not necessarily be African American?
That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it, and ladies, you help me out here. I think my approach has been one that just leads by example. So rather than trying to explain it, I try to maybe articulate my moves, but also move in such a way that the urgency and the attention, that's needed speaks for itself. So that, in the event that they have questions about the why I'm doing something, then I can better speak to that. But I try to allow my actions to be that to paint the picture of what it is that I'm committed to.
Indeed. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I would agree.
You would agree? Okay. You would agree. Okay, good. So what kind of stereotypes did you encounter as it relates to perceptions of women of color? Any particular stereotypes that you encountered along the way to where you are now that you'd want to share with us?
Oh, I'm always told that I'm too direct and emotional. I think I'm getting better on the emotional part, but definitely tend to be very direct when it comes to getting things done. People say that I could point out more positives, more praise, use more words, kind of like do the sandwich technique. I get that feedback all the time.
So when you hear direct, do you push back? How do you process when you hear direct? You're too direct. How do you process that?
I don't push back. I agree that I'm direct, and I Ms. Kelli talked about being confident. I love my directness, but again, I'm aware of how it comes off on other people. I love who I am, and I believe that there are positives to being direct. I believe that it's actually a strength. So I try to show my staff the data that comes with being direct, and the needs that get met comes with being direct, and the passion behind being direct, and the urgency behind being direct. I try to share the why and how I think it's beneficial. I never try to change being so direct. I embrace it.
So can you ever recall a time when you were mischaracterized And what did you do about that when someone mischaracterized you that you didn't accept and embrace? Can you recall a time or share something like that with us?
Yeah, you're still talking to me?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think my staff has a good idea. Sometimes families who are new to you, who are new to us, I think see that direct and that urgency as being short. And to me, everything regarding a child is an urgent matter. And so I think I get that a lot from families. And once I've worked with them for a little while, they understand. But I do explain to families. I think I've just started out by going ahead in the first sentence, explaining myself, and then starting to work. But I get that a lot. And I don't want for people to think I'm short and don't care when it's actually the opposite. And I'm short and trying to meet a need.
Ms. Henderson, have you ever been mischaracterized? It's something that you didn't embrace?
So some might think that I also, they think that I'm direct or that I'm an angry Black woman, strong. But once they actually, host the conversation with me, they find out that I know how to balance empathy with high expectation. Mm-hmm. I too know exactly what I want for kids at my school and in my community, and that can't come off direct. But I've learned over the years to balance that with understanding people and their needs, and coupling that with the high expectations. And so that is where my school was birthed from. It was my journey of social emotional learning myself. Whereas when I was younger in my career as a leader, I was more direct and to the point, and it has to be this way. But life experience can change you in many, many ways to the point where this is a people business. And I had to learn how to understand the people that I serve and be compassionate and empathetic in order to empower them in order to get the work done.
So you're talking about you're talking about growth. How did that come about? I mean, how did you know you were growing? How did you know, like, you know what, I gotta think this way, I gotta do this, or I gotta do that? Because a lot of people aren't necessarily introspective. That's good introspection that you just shared with us.
Well, it took me a long time, and I knew I was growing because I was becoming uncomfortable. And so uncomfortable, you know that, oh, I must be growing. And I just did a lot of reflection. I'm very reflective and I'm very observant. And so when I speak or when I interact with people, I would always observe their facial expressions or their body language. And that told me, was I being too direct or was I not empathetic in this moment? But it really took me, honestly, losing really good talent in my school to understand that I had to change in some ways. And so I'm happy to say that I'm still doing the work, but 97% of my staff I've been able to retain. And so that lets me know that I'm on the right track. And it's not fake, it's real. I'm really interested in the people part of the business, not just the teaching and learning now.
At what point did you come to the conclusion that it wasn't necessarily just them? Because a lot of people, we've all worked with them, we've all worked under them, around them, like, well, they're, that's them, that's them, that's them. Not everybody stops and says, well, wait a minute, let me see here. So at what point did you say, wait a minute?
Well, I would say about 5 years ago, and I had a mass exodus out of my school, and I couldn't blame it on, they can't handle the kids, so they're leaving. No, part of that was my leadership. And so about 5 years ago, I had to have an honest conversation with myself and say, hey, Tihesha, if you really want to increase outcomes for students and you really want to create this environment where kids and teachers feel empowered, you got to do the work yourself. And so with me doing the work over a 5-year period, I was able to impress upon the people that I served and that I lead alongside with. They started to grow and change in the process as well. So it took a long time for me really to grow to the point where I'm at now.
Is there anything that any of you can say to women of color about where you are now and how you got to where you are now, that, advice that you would give them or guidance that you would have for them. And then I want to get back to the kids, because your passion for the kids is just so, it's so contagious. I want to talk about it some more, but advice to women of color.
Continue to be an expert at your craft, know your stuff, be confident. You are beautiful. You have something to contribute to this space, to this world. Never let anybody tell you that you're not beautiful and that you're not smart and that you don't have something to offer. But also be humble with it. There is a fine line between confidence and knowing your stuff and not being humble at the same time, and understanding that you too have opportunities and gaps that need to be filled.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ms. Marshall, you're nodding.
Absolutely. I would say everything in that Tihesha said, and then also look to see who else you can pull alongside you or who you can elevate up. Because to answer your question, like how do you get into these positions of success? And that's because my sisters have supported me to get here, and they consistently are. And so I'm always looking for how can I be that next person to help my next sister up. And so I'm extremely grateful. Wherever I look around, I'm surrounded by powerful, women of color. Like I look at these two here and I watch their moves, because even if they're not directly impacting me, I watch what they do so that I can then say, okay, let me take a step back. Have you thought about that? And so it's just everything that Tihesha said, and then also lifting up.
Yeah, lifting up. And Ms. Westerhaus?
Everything they said. They're brilliant leaders. I would only add, take feedback. Take all the feedback. Take all the feedback and reflect. All feedback is good feedback. It all teaches you something. So listen and reflect. Don't change yourself, but listen to feedback.
In a word, what makes for a good leader? In a word, I'll even give you two. What makes for a good leader? Based on your experience up to this point to where you are right now, what word or two words would you say makes for a good leader? And I won't stump you while you're thinking of that. Let me ask you this: as leaders and as the shepherds, so to speak, over these children, ultimately the lives of these children, who do you surround yourself with to make yourself better? Maybe not necessarily who, but perhaps what type of person what type of person as a leader do you surround yourself with? So, okay, so let's go to, what type of person do you surround yourself with, Ms. Marshall?
I'm always looking to surround myself with someone that I can learn and grow from. So I'm real comfortable being in spaces where, I have to really pay attention to the conversation. I'm like, what is that about? What book did they read? Because I want to push, exactly, that pushes me. But I also, every characteristic that we listed in terms of, being that servant leader, being humble, being courageous, I have to be around those like-minded people, because I can't be around the toxic people. I can't, because that takes my energy down. And if I'm in a space where if I'm being vulnerable and allowing myself to be humble and coachable, then I would like to be surrounded by people that also share that same characteristic.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Okay. Ms. Henderson?
Everything that she said.
You know what? This panel is going to be what she said. You all are right on it. You all are on the same page. That's wonderful, though. That's great. So, and Ms. Westerhaus?
I would only add what she said, and an honest person. As a leader, we do this because we're passionate and we're confident. I'm super opinionated, and I don't know everything. So I like for someone to push back in my circle on what I'm saying and make me think outside the box, show me different point of views.
Yeah, and that's intimidating for a lot of people in positions of leadership. What you all three just expressed is quite intimidating for a number of people in leadership, but it's also a characteristic that is pointed to quite often, a characteristic of successful leaders in leadership, in terms of what I've been reading. If I've been reading correctly, I don't know, but that's why you are where you are right now anyway, why you all three are where you are. What about the word or two that makes for a good leader? One or two words. You want me to come back to that again?
I would say coachable.
Coachable, okay. Coachable.
because we are lifelong learners ourselves. And so if you're surrounding yourself with those that are just as confident as you are and hardworking and have talent, you want to learn from them. And so you have to be coachable in order to learn from others that you're surrounding yourself with.
I'd say reflective. Yeah, you've got to consistently be looking, at just your surroundings and the outcome and what role you played in either of those, be it successful or not. But reflective.
So, and Ms. Westerhaus?
I would say resilient. That's what I've noticed about leaders, whether you have to be the strongest one for sure. And here I know as we've been leading through a pandemic, it took a lot of strength. And then the same thing when it comes to feedback, the growth mindset that Mrs. Henderson was talking about, you got to be able to take the feedback and get better. So I would say resilient.
So the kids, the young people, the core of what you all are doing, what is it about the mind, the soul, the spirit of a child that motivates you to be your best self and to continue to see to it that this child, the child after that, and the child after that? What motivates you about these young people?
I'd say their resilience and just the potential that they have. Like when I see a child and I look at, they're a clean slate, they're coming to you, and the matter of influence that you could have on them, and then the potential that they have to just take on the world, that's what energizes me. But that also makes me want to surround them with every bit of access and opportunity so that they can thrive.
Yeah. Miss Henderson?
Their brains are like sponges. They just pick up everything. They're interested in everything, and they're innocent. They haven't been tainted by life experiences. And so I just love that we can just pour into them any information, any experience, and that they thrive from it and they learn from it and they apply it every day.
Yeah. And Miss Westerhaus, what lights you up about the thought of pouring into a child?
I have known my whole life that I wanted to work with children. And I ask myself that question all the time, like, what is it about these kids? I think they're hilarious. They're so funny. They're putting things together. They're going to smile when they're not supposed to smile. That smile is going to warm your heart. They ask lots of questions. Their boundaries are off a little bit, which I think is so cute. I just love the kids. I don't know. They're just meant for me. And I think you asked a question earlier about like, how do you get people to love our children? And I try to weave that out at the interview. If you don't love kids, then that's problematic because the work is all around them. And if you don't love brown kids like you love other kids, that's problem. I don't know if I can even convince you of that. That's something else. So they're just the best part of my work.
Who inspired each of you to be your best selves? Or maybe what inspired you? Maybe it wasn't a person, maybe it was a thing, but what was your inspiration for becoming your very best self?
I would say, my teenage daughter. I have a daughter that will be graduating from high school this year, and she's watching me. And so that inspires me to be my best self so that she can grow into just a confident, honest, young lady herself. And definitely my parents inspire me as well.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Westerhaus?
Yeah, I have to say my mother. She was never settling when I was growing up. She was never settling for an A-. She wasn't settling for a lower than SAT score. She wasn't settling for laundry not folded crispy. And so she always pushed me to do whatever I was capable of at a high level, and continued to repeat to me that I was capable of doing things at a high level.
Yeah. And Ms. Marshall?
I'd say my mother as well. Just watching her move and then earn her space. She was a court reporter for 49 years, right? I mean, this is 49 years. And I watched her just, work with different judges and just find her space. No matter what title she held, she was the power that was in that courtroom, no matter who was sitting on the bench. And I watched that, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. So she kept me positioned. My entire family just there was no question as to whether or not I was going to move in a certain direction.
But and speaking of power, can any of you recall a time when your voice was more powerful than you ever would have realized? Where when you exercised your voice, the power of that decision to exercise your voice was humbling to you. You didn't realize it. I know there's one for each of you. I know there's one for each one of you in that area.
I'm always amazed when students can quote something I said years ago. I remember when you said these words to me. Whenever they tell me that, I'm always blown away that they were listening so closely.
Wow. Yeah. Why? Why is that? Why are you blown away?
I mean, I even had to, like, you say a lot of things, but it seems like, when I feel like teaching / preaching is what I was doing. And you say a lot of things. And when they would capture that one thing and then apply it 7, 8 years later, you just know that they were listening. And when you thought they weren't listening, and it's meaningful.
You every part of it, but you just weren't necessarily aware of how firmly and how solidly it landed, I guess, is what you're saying. You meant what you said.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't just talking, right?
You
meant everything you said, but when you found out how well that's saying something. Okay. Lost you for just a second. Can you repeat what you just said?
No, I meant what I said. I think, and I even see some of those students applying it to situations. That lets me know that they were really listening.
Okay, Ms. Marshall?
I'm sorry. For me, it's when other leaders reach out and seek support, or ask me to be that thought partner with them. And I'm just appreciative that they value my input. But then that lets me know, like, oh, okay, so they were watching, they were listening. So just to be able to be that resource, I think that's what, it takes me back sometimes.
I think for me, back a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah, when you're like, oh, wow. Go ahead, Ms. Henderson.
I think for me, it's when other leaders would say, you need to speak up more. You have a lot of ideas to contribute. You're so quiet. Speak up more. And then when I have teacher leaders in my school that they just stay late with me just to pick up anything that they can learn and to be developed and coached.
Yeah, indeed. That's great. Are there any stereotypes of women, of African-American women, that exist today or that have existed that you feel like you're constantly fighting against? And then on the other hand, are there any images or any examples of African-American females, professional women that you applaud and perhaps maybe even use as examples when you can? So the negative and the positive, I guess I would say. Maybe there aren't any negative ones that you come against. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for thought, food for thought. Ms. Westerhaus, you have any?
I don't think I have any negative.
Negative stereotypes?
As far as I can see, negative stereotypes? No, I say a lot of positives. We just had the March Madness Final Four with the Black female coaches. We have Stacey Abrams. We have Michelle. We have someone in the white. I mean, it's the year in my opinion, it's the season for us. And so I'm excited to be doing this work at this time.
Yeah. Tapping into the power. I love it. So Ms. Henderson, negative stereotypes or positive stereotypes or both?
I agree. We have a lot of Black female leaders that are doing a lot of great things in our country and in our city. One person I would love to lift up is Joyce Acreage. Joyce Acreage I was her assistant principal, and she was hands down the best leader that I've seen in a school. And she taught me so well to be a strong Black woman in this position. But she knew how to build relationships with her teachers, whatever race or gender they were. And she was able to get them empowered to do the work for students. So no matter what, she was still a Black woman leading a majority white school, but somehow she was able to build those relationships and really get the work going. And so I really definitely wanted to lift her up. She helped me a lot. And she still is my mentor to this day. But
love it, love it, love it. So, and Miss Marshall, love that. Great story. Great story.
I think Joyce was all of our mentors, if I'm not mistaken, because you said that name. I'm like, yes.
I'm adding her to my list.
Yeah, absolutely. But in speaking to the negative stereotypes, I think anytime, and we saw this with our recent election, right? Anytime a woman of color speaks passionately and intelligently and confidently
Yes.
and consistently about anything, then the stereotypes of aggression, anger, confusion come up. But that's that fear, right? Because we're standing confidently. So, we've got a long way to go. This is definitely the year of the woman, especially the year of the woman of color.
Mhm.
But, just being cognizant of the fact that it shouldn't be that challenging for us to stand in front of a group of people and be influential without those negative attacks that like come personally.
Right.
They don't
Right.
attack our agenda, they attack us personally.
Yes.
Anytime
Exactly.
we're advocating for ourselves or advocating for the betterment of our people.
Indeed, indeed. Well, a question that has come up, and it's a good question. Is it possible to make a strong statement to use your voice and power other than verbally, other than with words? We can come back to that one if you want. Is it possible to do that? That again, that's just a question that just came up.
Well, I think you have to lead by example. You have to lead by example. So I think we spoke a little bit about that earlier. In the event that I need whomever the audience might be to capture the message in which it's intended, and I know that maybe my words may not come off right or may not be received, then I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to lead into the desired outcome.
Do any of you feel the need still even at this stage in your careers, do you still feel the need you have to prove yourself?
every day.
Okay. Okay. Please elaborate.
I feel like every day I'm proving to myself, one, because I have high expectations for myself. But two, I have to work harder than any other leader in this work to get the respect and to get the buy-in from my staff. There are always questions or what research are you using? And so definitely have to work hard every day, and I have to know my stuff, because the minute I don't know something, then they will attack that. So
Tell me about it. Every day. You don't know. And it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll find out, because it's almost impossible to know every single thing. And like I'm in a different industry, but when you're put on the spot, live, and well, what's this? What's that? I don't know. And that's okay. That's okay, because I want to know and I'll find out, but I don't know. But I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But anyway, Ms. Marshall, you were about to say something.
Oh, no.
About proving yourself. Do you feel the need to prove? Ms. Westerhaus, do you feel the need to prove yourself every day?
So I nodded my head, and I think I agree with Mrs. Henderson. Maybe to myself, I think in the community, outside of my school building that I love so much, she's absolutely right. We are always being compared and always have to prove. Mm-hmm. But technically, when I come to work every day, I do the best that I can do. And I think, I hear my mother's voice still, I am capable of great things. And so I work to do the best that I can, the best way I know I can. Mm-hmm. And I believe that is going to be competitive and exceptional. But outside of that if I start thinking about perceptions, I know that we always are going to have to prove ourselves.
Again, the title of our discussion is Stepping into Your Power Using Your Voice. I guess for each of you, can you tell or share with those who are watching and listening what that means to you and what you can leave other professional African American women of color in education or otherwise? What you could leave them with when it comes to stepping into your power using your voice? Because you all are so very accomplished, so thoughtful, so pensive, and so reflective. I love it. I love it. But you're educators, you're lifelong educators, so of course you're going to know these things. But what would you, as we wrap up, what would you, each of you, say about stepping into your power using your voice? And we'll start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, Ms. Henderson is smiling at me, so I'll go to you first.
I would say just be thoughtful in your words and watch how you say things. Just be cognizant of how what you say may affect those around you. But it's absolutely okay to be confident and to use your voice for the greater good. But just watch how you say it and be mindful of those that you're saying it to.
Yeah, I would say never be afraid to speak. I know sometimes when you're in a room of people, it can be intimidating to question and ask, but I think you shouldn't be content until your heart sits well with something, especially in the work that you do. And keep in mind that you represent little you and the children you have. You're asking questions for the girl you were, the woman you're becoming. Like, it's okay to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to use your voice. Don't be afraid to bother somebody with your voice. And I think leaders do those things. When I think about how I got to leadership, it's because I kept asking them questions, and they're like, "We got to move her out that room. She won't stop. She won't leave us alone." So ask the questions. Speak up.
Right. Yeah. Ask the questions, indeed. And Ms. Marshall, stepping into your power using your voice.
I think the only thing that I would add is be prepared to put in the work. So as you're stepping boldly, as you're stepping into and you're leveraging your confidence, you've got to know that they're coming right behind that is a level of work that you have got to put in so that you remain credible.
Credible, you remain relevant. You all are so very relevant. You all are so very credible. You're all so intelligent and so well spoken. I just love everything that you've had to say. We could go on and on and on, but I said I wanted to get to the kids, and I think we did just a bit. But your passion for the young people should. Here's one question I do want to. What's the most? I guess I'll say recently. What the most interesting thing you've learned from a child or from one of your students recently? What's the most interesting or surprising thing that you've learned? Because I know you learn from them all the time.
So I had a student, I didn't realize this about myself, but I would always fall back on sarcasm as I'm talking. And I had a young lady come to me and check me on it. And, and she said, Miss Marshall, we're listening to you. We don't need all the extra. And I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean by the extra? And she called me out on my sarcasm. And I had never been more proud of this young lady at the time. And I said, you know what, you're right. So she gave me a growth point. So that now I still to this day think about my messaging and I'm like, am I leveraging sarcasm to get my point across? And if so, like, how is it being perceived? And so I'll never forget her. I will never forget Chelsea. Chelsea checked me on that.
Chelsea checked you. Okay, I got the growth point. I like that. I'm going to use that. Thank you. I'm going to steal that one. Growth point. Ms. Westerhaus?
I think, I get my joy out of the humor of our students, and Ms. Marshall had a funny story. I think the funniest thing my students have been doing recently is bringing to my attention these TikTok videos of administrators that are hilarious, and they point out the similarities between myself and the administrator in the videos. And so there are things that I do that I didn't realize I do. I keep keys. This is a common thing you see in the video, is the jangling keys and the head nods. And so that's been hilarious to me that they see these videos and they think of me and they bring them to my attention.
So they teach you about yourself. That's interesting. Yeah. And Ms. Henderson?
I would say just listening to my younger students mimic me. And so they are kind of like my barometer. They let me know how I sound. And so even the teacher, when they would play school, sometimes I would be like, oh my God, do I sound like that? So they are my barometer to let me know, okay, how do am I coming across correctly? So
yeah, indeed. Ladies, it has been a pleasure and a joy. And I tell you what, stepping into your power, using your voice, I've never seen it done better. This panel has been absolutely amazing. And I thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here with us. And any closing thoughts or anything you want to share before we sign off? Anything you want to add? No? Okay. Well, thank you all. Pardon? What were you saying, Miss Marshall?
No, I was going to say just thank you for the opportunity, and then just to always, remember what we all talked about in terms of, having that confidence but remaining humble, so that you can, you don't miss a message, and then just the importance of being that partner and support for the next woman of color coming alongside you.
All right. All great words to live by. And I hope we can all get together again soon and have another chat because I liked it. I loved it. So hopefully we can all do this again. Thank you all so very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be talking again soon.